The first part of this video explored 8 cities that redefined what it means to design well. From Tokyo's perfect subway to Amsterdam's canals. But other equally brilliant cities were left out. Today we travel to 8 new places where urban planning becomes applied art, cities that understood how to live better without expanding further. From Vienna, which transformed public housing into infrastructure, to Oslo, which erased its industrial port to give it back to the people. Welcome to the part 2, from the best designed cities in the world. 1. Zurich, the rich city where driving a car is a useless luxury. Zurich presents a fascinating paradox. It's one of the world's most prosperous cities, yet driving there is deliberately unappealing, not by accident, but by design. In the 1980s, the city made a radical decision. The tram would be the default mode of transport, and the car, the exception. To achieve this, they implemented a system of intelligent traffic lights that detects trams and gives them absolute priority. Cars literally wait. Parking spaces are scarce and expensive by design, while an annual public transport pass costs less than 3 tanks of gas. This isn't just environmental policy, it's strategic urban planning. The pedestrianized streets of Bahnhofstrasse and Niederdorf have seen retail sales soar by 30% after the removal of car traffic. Cafes spill onto the sidewalks, bicycles ride freely, and the city breathes. Zurich demonstrates something counterintuitive. Limiting cars doesn't impoverish a city, it enriches it. True luxury is not speeding around Paradeplatz in a BMW, but walking leisurely under the linden trees while a blue tram passes every 3 minutes. 2. Oslo, from fuel tanks to urban beaches. For decades, Oslo's waterfront was a wall of concrete and steel. Industrial docks, elevated highways, and fuel tanks separating the city from the fjord. It was the typical landscape of a 20th century port city, functional but hostile. Then, Oslo decided to reclaim its coastline. The Fjord City project wasn't simply an aesthetic renovation, it was a complete rewriting of the contract between the city and the water. First, they removed the road barrier that cut off access. Then, they demolished outdated warehouses and replaced them with a bold mix. Housing, offices, museums like the Munch and the Astrup Fearnley, wooden boardwalks, and artificial beaches where children swim in the summer. The old opera house, with its sloping roof that invites climbing, became the symbol of this transformation. A building not just to be admired, but inhabited. Oslo's brilliance lay not only in changing uses, but also in capturing the value generated. The increased property values funded public infrastructure, creating a virtuous cycle. Today, miles of coastline that were once off-limits are the city's backyard. Oslo understood something essential. Port cities shouldn't turn their backs on the water. They should embrace it. 3. Stockholm, when every neighborhood is a waterfront. Stockholm is built on 14 islands, connected by more than 300 bridges. It could have been logistical chaos, but the Swedes turned the fragmented geography into their greatest asset. The archipelago isn't an obstacle, it's the backbone of the transportation system. Public ferries are included in the public transport pass, like floating subway lines. You hop on at Slussen, cross over to Djurgården in 7 minutes, and go about your day without a second thought. This modal integration is so seamless that locals don't even perceive it as special. But it is. Each island has its own distinct identity. Södermalm is bohemian and alternative. Gamla Stan retains its medieval layout, and Östermalm exudes bourgeois elegance, and they all share something: a waterfront. The riverside promenades aren't a luxury reserved for upscale areas, they're democratic infrastructure. From Nordmalerstrand to Strandvägen, you can walk, run, or sit and watch sunsets without encountering fences or private property. Stockholm teaches us that geographical fragmentation is not a weakness if it is intelligently designed. Every bridge is a link, every ferry a thread that weaves the city together, and water doesn't divide, it unites. 4. Chicago, 31 kilometers of coastline for people, not for towers. Chicago has something very few cities achieve: a full Lake Michigan waterfront without skyscrapers blocking the view. This is neither by chance nor the generosity of developers. It is the result of a vision by Daniel Burnham in 1909. The shoreline should be public, free, and unobstructed forever. Since then, a series of regulations have protected Lakefront Park, prohibiting high-rise buildings in the first few rows facing the lake. The result is a 20-mile green ribbon that runs through the city like a giant lung. Beaches, running trails, bike paths, gardens, and meadows where people picnic with the skyline as a backdrop. Millennium Park, with its iconic cloud gate, Anish Kapoor's polished steel bean, has become the most photographed urban living room in the world. But the magic lies not only in the public art, but also in how this space generates indirect value. Nearby buildings pay premium prices for views of the park, indirectly funding its maintenance. The Chicago Riverwalk is another shining example, a three-level pedestrian promenade that transformed a neglected industrial river into a vibrant social artery with restaurants, kayaks, and floating terraces. Chicago understood that public access to water is not an expense, it's an investment. And the increased property values prove it. So far, we've seen how water can be a public asset rather than a barrier, but there are cities without lakes or coastlines that still manage to be extraordinary. How? By working with what they have, their hills, their history, their unique topography. If you're enjoying this journey through the world's best designed cities, a like helps us reach more people who, like you, believe urban planning matters. And if you haven't already, subscribe. In upcoming episodes, we'll continue to dissect what truly makes a city work. 5. Lyon, the city that does not flatten its hills. Lyon could have been easier to build if they had flattened Fourvière and Croix-Rousse, but they didn't. And that decision to respect the natural topography defines its character. Instead of imposing a Cartesian grid, Lyon adapts to the slopes with a secret network of traboules, covered passageways that cut through buildings and connect streets at different levels. Originally used by the Quénots, 19th century silk weavers, to transport fabrics without getting them wet, today they are pedestrian shortcuts known only to locals. You walk along Rue Saint-Jean, enter an anonymous doorway, cross a Renaissance courtyard, climb some stairs, and emerge 3 streets higher. It's like an urban video game. But Lyon doesn't just celebrate the effort of climbing. It also makes it easier. The Fourvière funicular climbs 100 meters in 2 minutes, connecting the lower city with the Basilica and the Roman amphitheater. It's not tourism, it's everyday infrastructure. The topography could have been a problem. Lyon has made it its identity. The hills force you to walk more slowly, to look up, to discover. And the traboules remind us of something essential. The best cities are not the most efficient, but those that hold secrets. 6. London, King's Cross, building a city on top of an industrial city. King's Cross was once synonymous with decay, abandoned warehouses, brothels, syringes on the sidewalks, a no man's land between 2 train stations. Today, it's one of London's most vibrant neighborhoods, and its regeneration is a textbook example of contemporary urban planning. The key wasn't to raise everything and start from scratch, but to build upon what already existed. Victorian gasometers were transformed into circular residential buildings, preserving their metal structure as an industrial tribute. The former coal depot is now the London campus of Central St. Martin's, injecting 4,000 creative students into the neighborhood every day. Granary Square, with its dancing fountains, is the social heart of the area. Google offices coexist with independent cafes, tech startups with art galleries. The mix of uses is deliberate: 50% offices, 40% housing, 10% retail and cultural. And crucially, King's Cross is a multimodal hub. 6 tube lines, 2 national rail stations, and the Eurostar to Paris. Connectivity isn't an extra, it's the driving force. The brilliance of this project lies in the fact that it didn't displace the local population. It integrated social housing alongside market-rate apartments, preventing complete gentrification. King's Cross demonstrates that urban regeneration doesn't require erasing history. It requires respecting it, reinterpreting it, and weaving it into the future. 7. Vienna. Affordable rent as an urban policy, not a miracle. Vienna shatters the myth that affordable housing is incompatible with advanced capitalism. More than 60% of Viennese residents live in public or regulated housing, and we're not talking about dreary, gray apartment blocks. Wiener Wohnen, the municipal housing system, manages 220,000 apartments with design standards that would put many private buildings to shame. Interior courtyards with gardens, community libraries, game rooms, even swimming pools. Social mixing is mandatory. Teachers, doctors, and laborers live in the same building, paying rents according to their income. This prevents segregation and creates cohesive communities. But Vienna didn't remain stuck in the past. Seestad Aspern, on the outskirts, is a new TOD, transit-oriented development neighborhood built from the ground up. 20,000 future residents, a subway right outside, near-zero energy buildings, and an always active ground floor with shops and workshops. What's fascinating about Vienna is that it treats housing as public infrastructure, just like hospitals or schools. It doesn't wait for the market to solve the problem. It solves it directly, and it works. The result is a city without slums, without homeless camps, without a housing crisis. Vienna proves that affordable rent is not a miracle. It is a political decision sustained for a century. 8. Hong Kong. The most powerful promoter is the subway itself. Hong Kong is the world's most densely populated city, with 7.5 million people in 100 kilometers. It should be a traffic nightmare, but it isn't. The key is the MTR, the most profitable subway system on the planet, and its Rail Plus property model is brilliant. The MTR doesn't just operate trains. It builds cities. When a new line is planned, the government grants it real estate development rights over the stations. The MTR designs residential towers, shopping malls, and offices directly above and around each station. The profits from the sale and rental of these properties finance the construction of the subway itself. It's a virtuous cycle. The subway generates increased property values, and those values finance more subways. But there's more. The MTR doesn't build isolated stations, it builds vertical ecosystems. In places like Taikoo or Kowloon, you can live on the 40th floor, go down to the 20th floor to shop at the supermarket, go up to the 5th floor to catch the subway, and all without ever setting foot on the street. Elevated walkways connect buildings, creating a second pedestrian city above ground. This is especially brilliant in a subtropical climate with typhoons and torrential rains. You walk for miles indoors, in air conditioning. Hong Kong demonstrates that hyperdensity is not incompatible with walkability. It simply requires absolute vertical integration. The subway doesn't serve the city, it builds it. None of these cities is perfect, but they all solved a universal problem with a brilliant local idea. Zurich turned the tram into a religion. Oslo reclaimed its waterfront. Stockholm transformed water into structure. Chicago protected its lake. Lyon embraced its hills. King's Cross was reborn without erasing its past. Vienna proved that public housing can be a luxury, and Hong Kong made the subway a city-building force. The key is not to copy their formulas, but to understand their message. Good urban design is not a matter of money, but of priorities. Subscribe and keep exploring the future with us.